Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my final drive video or review of this Audi S6 Avant. Before we start, I just want to say a big shout out to my clothing brand Control and Shift. Today I'm wearing I Pity the Fuel. So please head over to my website and check out what we have for sale. Even if you buy something as small as a sticker, it supports me and my YouTube channel, so I really appreciate that. Also give us a follow on Instagram, Control and Shift. Right, back to the Audi S6 Avant. Now, I've been lucky enough to have this car for the past 10 days and it goes back to Audi UK tomorrow morning. It's getting swapped with something else from Audi, so I'm not massively gutted and disappointed, but I am going to miss this car because it has been absolutely epic. I've done 600 very mixed miles in it, by which I mean motorway miles, A and B roads like this, through town, and I've used it for pretty much everything. You know, I've transported my mountain bike to a couple of mountain bike parks. I've had my parents in it. We've gone out to dinner in it the other night. They were both massively impressed. They thought it was really comfortable and a beautiful place to be and a beautiful place to sit. I've taken some of my mates out in it. I've taken baby Gorilla out in it, my best friend Erin, all of whom have been massively impressed, and everyone have commented especially on the ride of this car, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. What I want to talk about before we start the review, and I promise to talk about this for a maximum of about 20 seconds, is the fake exhausts. The fake exhausts to me are the biggest disappointment with this car, not the fantastic 6-pot turbocharged diesel engine. No, the fake exhausts. I'm not going to talk about them again in this review, at least I'm going to try not to, but they are the biggest frustration and disappointment to me about this otherwise very, very compelling car. As a complete package, this car is just awesome. Like, it really is. But I can't forget, and I keep telling myself, that the retail on the road price of this particular spec car is £78,000. So let's call it an £80,000 car. And I know that I've got to stop using RRPs in my videos. I should really start researching what finance deals are, because the majority of people do buy these sort of cars, or most cars in fact, on finance these days. So I should be talking about monthly payments, but still, as a as a complete package and summary, £80,000 is a lot of money. But this is a lot of car. One of the biggest standouts of this car, as I talked about a minute ago, is the ride. The ride in this particular car is unbelievable, and to think that it's riding on 21-inch alloys or 21-inch wheels, and yet it just seems to iron out everything. I'm in Buckinghamshire at the moment, and this particular road route that I'm taking is some great roads, they're really good, but in something like, say, my M2 competition, it is so bumpy and actually quite unsettling through some of the corners, to the point where you're not sure what sort of speed you can go through them because the car's bouncing all over the place. Whereas in this, it just floats through corners and just deals with all the imperfections and massive holes and, you know, road joins that you go over. It's just, honestly, it's amazing, and it is pretty much the best ride I've ever experienced. I mean, something like my 7 Series, big puddle, has an equally impressive ride. So it's 7 Series sort of level, or A8 sort of level of comfort, but yet through the bends it stays lovely and flat, and it somehow, for a 2+ ton car, can manage to feel sporty. And that's what's so amazing about this particular car and model, is it has a number of characters. It's not just a sort of loungy, comfortable, very comfortable car. It is a car that can deal with pretty much everything. If I want to take it out for a quick 20-minute blast like I'm doing now, it feels great, and it encourages you to sort of, you know, to push it a little bit. It's a very big, heavy car, but you can, you know, you can enjoy yourself. You can go out for a nice, spirited drive and enjoy yourself. But in the same way that you can chuck your bike in the back and cruise to a mountain bike centre, or you can chuck your family in the car and just cruise cross continents in absolute comfort and luxury. There's some big puddles around, and excuse the continuity between some of my drive-by shots and drone shots and the roads and stuff outside. We've just had a torrential downpour. I mean torrential, lightning, thunder, everything. And all of the shots that you're seeing on camera were actually shot in the past couple of hours. So big change in conditions, but I'm glad that it's, you know, there's enough light outside and you can actually hopefully see me. As talked about in my first drive video, this car is fitted with the air suspension, and that is what contributes to this incredible ride. Unfortunately, in the UK, the base spec S6 cannot be optioned with the air suspension. So if you want this air suspension now on customer cars, you have to go for the 4-sprung model, which is £80,000 base. I mean, it comes fully loaded, don't get me wrong. There's very little you can add to a 4-sprung model. I think like the tow bar mount, and maybe that's about it. So if you're willing to spend big money and you've got 80 grand, then you're getting one hell of a package. But unfortunately, you can't spend 62,500, get the base model, and then add like a pan roof and say the air suspension, because the air suspension is not available on the base models. But saying that, without trying a car or an S6 without the air suspension, so on the stock suspension, I can't really comment. But even if it's half as good as the ride with this car, then it's still a very, very interesting car. What I would urge you to do though is, if you're going for the base model, is stick with the standard 20-inch wheels and not the 21-inch wheels like on this car, because I really think that without the air suspension, you just need that extra bit of tyre cushioning, especially here in the UK, where honestly, I know people get big wheels for aesthetics, but 20 inch is big enough. These 21s do look fantastic, but I can imagine 21s on a non-air suspension car. I can imagine the ride is probably not the best. For those of you that follow me for a while on my channel, you'll know that I love a 6-pot German turbocharged diesel engine, and this one is absolutely no exception whatsoever. It has some trickery in it, so it has an electronic compressor that helps spin up the turbo or something from lower revs, meant to sort of eliminate most of the turbo lag that you do get in all turbocharged engines, especially diesels. Though you get an initial bit of lag, and to be fair, I can't feel that working, and I dread to think what this engine would feel like without that little compressor, because it does suffer low down. So let's put it into manual. We're in 5th gear now at 40 miles an hour, at about 1400, 1500 rev. Put your foot down, there's nothing, and then you can feel it feeding in. But you do get caught out, especially when you're in automatic, and this is my next point. Brilliant engine, a bit laggy down low, 8-speed, I think it's the ZF gearbox in this one, which we all love and I go on about all the time, and it's brilliant in manual mode. But when you put it over into auto mode, it's frustrating. The calibration and the software for this particular gearbox is not good, because the minute you hesitate with your right foot, it changes down, or it changes down 2 gear all the time, and it doesn't allow you to use the torque, unlike say if I was in a 530D or even something like a 140i or 240i with the ZF 8-speed. If you're in just normal comfort and you're cruising along and you just touch the accelerator a little bit, it seems to understand what you're asking from it, so it won't necessarily kick down 2 gears every time you touch the accelerator a little bit. Whereas in this car, there's either absolutely nothing out of corner, so I'm in 7th now, absolutely nothing, bit more accelerate, bit more, and then it drops down 2 gears, and then it gives me quite a lot more. So there's something that's not quite right there with the calibration, and I've experienced this in a few other lesser diesel Audis as well. I just don't know why they haven't got that calibration quite right, and it does get a little bit frustrating, and I end up just whacking it into manual all the time because, as I say, in manual, that's third gear there, there's a massive lag, that was foot on the floor, but then it absolutely flies. it really does absolutely fly. Handling, you know, for a big car, heavy car, it handles very, very well. There's a tiny bit of feel through the steering. The Quattro system, all-wheel drive system, is amazing. It just allows you to have, you know, maximum traction all the time, especially in this sort of weather. And what else I absolutely love with this car, and all cars that have it, is the four-wheel steer, and you really get used to it. In fact, you know, I'm sure when I jump back in my 7 Series in the next couple of days that doesn't have four-wheel steer, it's going to feel very long and quite lazy through some of the tighter sort of stuff. But this car with the four-wheel steer, it just, what four-wheel steer does, for those of you that haven't driven one or driven a car with four-wheel steer, it just basically shortens the wheelbase. It makes the car feel so much shorter, so much more nimble, which is great in a big car like this. And when you're on the move, and once you get above a certain speed, usually around 40 miles an hour, I'm not sure what it is with the Audi, instead of the rear wheels turning against the front wheels, so shortening the wheelbase, they actually then turn with the front wheels, so they turn together in parallel. So that basically, well, not in parallel, the rears won't turn quite as much as the front. I think they only turn up to about 3 or 3.5 degrees. But essentially, when you're, say, changing lanes on the motorway or whatever, it just makes the whole process a lot easier. And the car, you just don't feel the momentum of the car because the whole car moves, it kind of slides sideways as opposed to turning sideways. So really impressive. I'm a big fan of four-wheel steer on big heavy cars like this S6 Avant. In terms of performance, well, this engine produces a fairly average 344 brake horsepower. I say average because in something like this S6, the previous one was basically 100 brake horsepower on top of that. But this one has got 700 Newton meters of torque, and that is what makes this car feel perhaps half the weight that it actually is. And coming out of junctions like this, in this weather, again, Quattro, put your foot down, and it just absolutely picks up and goes and fires it down the road. It's got a 0 to 60 claim figure of 5.1 seconds, and I'm in no doubt, after driving this car for 10 days, that that is a conservative figure, and I'm in no doubt that that 5.1 seconds is achievable in weather like this with, you know, much lower traction because of the Quattro system. But when we talk about diesels, we usually talk about miles to the gallon, and this is another plus point for this new S6 in my opinion. I've averaged in, well, 9 days of driving and 600 mixed miles, I've averaged just over 36 miles to the gallon. Now that might not sound amazing, but when you consider what I've done with it, it's a press car, so you know, I've driven it reasonably hard on days, I've done so many different journeys in it, I've sat in traffic jams, so as a real life average, let's call it 36 miles to the gallon. I know if I was in the previous S6 or the RS6 or something in that sort of ilk, I would have not got those figures over, say, 20. And in fact, I would have said it would have been more like a high teens average combined figure in the same scenarios that I've taken this car through. So that's a massive improvement, and that's why I really don't have any issue with this car having this amazing, seriously torquey diesel engine, because it works miracles. It throws the car down the road, it's plenty fast enough, and yet it returns really reasonable figures. And I think if you weren't pushing it and you were on a long journey, you could easily achieve high 40s or 50-ish fully loaded, and that would mean that this car's got, I don't know, a range of about 700 miles. And this car has actually, or this spec, although it's pretty much got every option ticked, it doesn't have the bigger fuel tank. So it has a 63 or 62 litre tank as opposed to the optional 73 litre tank. So factor the bigger tank in, which is only about 120 quid option, then this car is probably capable of 750, 800 miles on a long run, which is a really remarkable achievement in something so big, so heavy, and essentially so fast. Can't review an Audi without talking about its interior, obviously, and I did talk a lot about this in my first drive video, and it is absolutely beautiful in here. It's stunning, and everyone that gets in here is just blown away by it, whether they're BMW or Mercedes people or whatever. It's absolutely gorgeous in here, it really is. And I think in terms of aesthetics, Audi really nailed it on the head with this interior. Like, I can't fault it in terms of aesthetics, in terms of looking around the interior and looking at everything that I'm surrounded by. The feel-good factor, if you like, whether you're sitting in the back or you're sitting in the front, it is just lovely in here. It's such a nice place to sit. And in fact, before I started filming this video, I sat at the side of the road for half an hour for that downpour to finish, and I was sitting here thinking, this is a really, really lovely cabin. It really is. Unfortunately, it does have its faults, and I've talked about this in a few other new Audi videos that have got this new MMI system and all this touchscreen stuff, and I'm not really the biggest fan of touchscreen. There's a lot of tech in here, don't get me wrong, but in terms of actually using it, it's a bit of a pain. Just as, you know, something as easy as, or yeah, normally easy as putting my heating up or down, I've had this car 10 days, I still have to look down as to where it is, and I shouldn't be looking down, I should be looking at the road, so it is a bit of a distraction. And I've had people saying that you can ask the car to change it, you know, the climate control, which I'll demonstrate now. Turn heating up to 21 degrees.
I'll increase the temperature to 21 degrees.
So there you go, that works. And yeah, impressive tech. But are we going forward or are we going backwards? Because I'm sorry, what was wrong with just turning the temperature up with a, you know, with a little dial? And now I've actually got to still press a button and then ask the car and hope that it understands me, because it does occasionally get it wrong, like all voice controls do. So to me, that's not progress. It's cool tech, but it's definitely not progress. So yeah, things like that annoy me, but it's a bit of a catch-22, because I love being here looking and admiring all this, but in practice I don't particularly like using it all. Okay guys, I think that would be it for today. I've loved having this car. It has its faults, it's very expensive, but boy is it an interesting package, and its ride, I can't stop going on about its ride. I dread to think what my M2 is going to feel like after I've been driving this for 10 days. But I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I've been quite limited because of the weather, and now the light is fading. Massive thanks again to Audi UK for giving me this car, and thanks to you guys for watching my channel and my videos. Please give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this particular video, and leave any comments and questions below. I will see you guys at the next video. Cheers.